tell us a little bit about your unique sort of nutritional approach, because I think it's really something that's necessary, because there's a lot of diet wars out there, Wade, and I think they can be avoided if we can just stick to some principles.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, why would anybody engage in any dietary practice? Well, there's three specific reasons that we've identified. One for aesthetic purposes, one for performance-based purposes, and one for health purposes. And so the first thing that one has to identify is which one of those aspects are key at any point in time. Generally, most people get started for an aesthetics ideal. They want to lose weight. They want to look good for the girls or their guys or whatever. And as we're younger, we're more aesthetically driven because that determines, attractiveness and the idea of replication. You can get into all the biology about that. So there's an undercurrent drive there around that. And then as we tend to age, or we get into more specific sides, we're trying to eat a diet either consciously or unconsciously, which is performance-based. Now, I don't look at things as absolutes. I go, the truck driver who's feeling tired pulls into the truck shop, takes an energy drink or a coffee and a bar out of the place, is following what he feels is the best version of a performance-based diet. His blood sugar's low. He's getting drowsy. He pulls into the truck shop. He gets a shot of glucose. He gets some caffeine, pulls back out, goes the next 2 hours. He crashes, pulls in again, and does it. So he's adjusting his diet to a performance-based.
Yeah.
Same thing as a mother who's, taking, foods to make sure the blood sugar for their kids, they don't go all crazy on a long drive or something like that. So, and then the final piece, what happens is usually there's consequences to those aesthetic diets or performance-based diets. And there's some compromisation of one's health. And then usually people will adjust their diet based on either regaining their health or retaining their health. And that becomes more of a focus as people age. Now, ultimately, in an ultimately developed program, you would be able to account for all of those in the appropriate ratios relative to your age, relative to your goals and to your performance parameters. Now, there's another overarching piece that comes with this. And this is an area that Matt, my business partner, runs Bioptimizers, and we founded the company. We were both personal trainers, both had a background in exercise physiology, nutrition, kinesiology, these type of things. And he did very well on a ketogenic diet. And I did really well on a plant-based diet. Even though we grew up in the same part of the world, we grew up in similar environments. And we used to have these debates. Some would say arguments.
Some would say wars.
Some would say wars. And so there was this back and forth debate. And the point of the debates, once we got past just trying to hold an ego position, is like, well, how do we get to the truth? And when we experimented with each other's dietary strategies, we found strengths, but we also found weaknesses. So I did do better when I supplemented my diet with some high quality essential fatty acids. But if my my fats got too high, my body, I would just get the runs. I'd see fat in the stool. I didn't feel good. For Matt, he started incorporating more fibrous foods with his ketogenic diet, which was an improvement. But if he ate too much, he just didn't feel good. Or if he had too many carbohydrates, he would have issues. Now, years later, so we worked on this for decades and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Well, now you can, what took us 20 years to figure out, you can take a simple DNA test. And it turns out that a certain percentage of the population processes fats really well, and a certain percentage process carbohydrates really well. And that's going to be, you're going to lean more to a ketogenic or more to a plant-based diet. And then somewhere in between would be like a paleo. And so I see those as kind of like the three, horsemen or legs of a table. And then there's extremes on each one of those edges. Now, unfortunately, in an internet world, the extremes tends to push the messaging. And what happens is, if you go to a bell curve, and we're talking about this, we're releasing a book on this next year. We're publishing with a major publishing house to actually illustrate how do you figure this out for yourself. The challenge when you go online is you let's say you get exposed to the whatever diet, the ABC diet, let's call it whatever. And you read the testimonials, and if you look at a bell curve of distribution, there's going to be like 1.5% of the people on that bell curve that when they did this diet, it was the perfect diet for where they were in their life. They recovered from some health condition. Their blood sugar got better. Their cholesterol dropped. Their brain turned on. And those are all on the testimonial pages, and they're very convincing, and they got the video, and you got the advocate out there. And then on the other side of the equation, there's 1.5 people that are people who are refunding the product. They felt terrible, got sick. It was awful for them. But you don't hear about those. But those people will disgruntledly attack on social media that program. And they now become the advocates because they switch to another diet, and they now move to that 1.5%. And so now they become that which they were attacking in the other guys because they found what's right for them. And the problem is there's a need to bolster one's dietary practices in a social circle to get social acceptance of what you're doing, or to reinforce that which you don't understand. And that's my, literally 35 years in the dietary industry and seeing all the trends throughout that time and the recycled trends several times. I began to recognize there's benefits and liabilities to every diet. And there's diets built for different people at different times in their life. And the question is, how do you identify what's the major direction of your life? How do you stay flexible so that you can change as your body changes? And then how do you augment and optimize your diet based on your individual limitations and your predispositions for high performance? And if you can figure that out, you can live long, you can live strong, and you can have a diet that you can feel confident about, and you don't have to put anybody else's diet down.